Captain Naira Voss stood at the observation deck of the Stellar Seeker, her iridescent scales reflecting the distant starlight as she studied the anomalous readings. The research vessel had been monitoring the dead zone of the Helios sector for 3 standard cycles when they detected it, a signal so ancient it seemed impossible that it still existed. Captain, Chief Science Officer Krell Daxon's voice carried a tremor she'd never heard before. The usually composed Centaurian's 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. The signal! It's of human origin. The word hung in the air like a physical presence. Humans, the legendary species that had vanished over 40,000 years ago, leaving behind only ruins and mysteries. Naira's antenna twitched, sensing the sudden tension in the room. "Impossible," she whispered, but the data streaming across her neural interface told a different story. The signal's signature was unmistakable, matching perfectly with the fragments of human technology they discovered over the centuries. First Officer Jasper Thorne, one of the few Andromedans serving in the Galactic Science Council, moved closer to the holographic display. His crystalline form caught the light, sending prismatic patterns across the deck. "The signal appears to be some form of message, Captain. It's been repeating on a quantum frequency that shouldn't have survived this long." Naira activated the ship's primary analysis matrix, her fingers dancing across the neural interface. The message began to decrypt, transforming from static into something that made her blood run cold. "This is Earth, final transmission, warning to all who hear this." The voice was distorted but clearly human, carrying emotions that transcended species barriers. "We discovered the key to immortality, but we should have left that door locked." The bridge crew listened in stunned silence as the message continued, telling a story of humanity's final days. They had achieved their greatest dream, the ability to transfer consciousness between bodies to live forever. But something went wrong. The process began to corrupt, turning people into something else, something that hungered for more than just immortality. "The colonies are gone," the voice continued, growing more desperate. "Earth is quarantined. If you're receiving this, stay away. What we've become, it's still out there waiting." "Message ends there, Captain," Thorne reported, his crystalline features reflecting concern. "But there's more data encoded in the carrier wave, coordinates." Navigator Zena Vex, her tentacles moving anxiously across her control panel, spoke up. "The coordinates point to the Edge Nebula, Captain. It's been restricted space for millennia. No one knows why. The records were lost during the Great Migration." Naira felt the weight of command settling heavily on her shoulders. The discovery of human ruins had always led to technological leaps for the galaxy, but this was different. This wasn't just technology, this was a warning, a story of hubris and destruction that had echoed across 40,000 years to reach them. "Contact Council Command," she ordered, her decision made. "We're going to those coordinates." "Captain," Krell interjected, "Council protocols clearly state that any human artifacts must be reported and left untouched until a full research team can be assembled." "This isn't just an artifact, Krell. This is a message, perhaps the last message from a species that shaped our galaxy. And if what they're warning us about is still out there." The words hung unfinished in the air. They all knew the implications. If something had survived humanity's extinction, something dangerous enough to destroy an entire species capable of achieving immortality, the galaxy needed to know. As the Stellar Seeker changed course, Naira couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The stars seemed different now, as if they were hiding secrets in their ancient light. The human's final warning played over and over in her mind, and she wondered if they were making the same mistake, letting curiosity override caution. But there was no turning back now. The signal had found them for a reason, and whatever waited at those coordinates would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's fate. As they entered hyperspace, Naira made a silent promise to her crew and to the long-dead voice that had reached across time to warn them. They would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. What they didn't know was that something was already awakening, stirring from its long dormancy. The signal hadn't just reached the Stellar Seeker. It had triggered something else, something that had been waiting patiently for 40,000 years, watching and waiting for someone to finally answer humanity's last broadcast. The Stellar Seeker emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Edge Nebula, its systems humming as they adjusted to normal space. The nebula loomed before them. A vast curtain of purple and crimson gases shot through with veins of something darker that seemed to pulse like living tissue. Captain Naira Voss felt her scales bristle as she studied the sensor readings. Something was wrong with the local space-time fabric microscopic tears that shouldn't exist, quantum fluctuations that defied known physics. Multiple anomalies detected, First Officer Thorne reported, his crystalline form dimming slightly as if in response to the unsettling readings. The nebula's composition doesn't match any known cosmic phenomena. These energy signatures, they're artificial. Krell Daxon worked furiously at his station, all four eyes focused on the stream of data. Captain, I'm detecting structures within the nebula. They appear to be moving. Moving, Naira's antenna twitched. Show me. The main view screen shifted, zooming in on a section of the nebula. Through the swirling gases, they could make out massive shapes, geometric patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves, architecture that ignored the basic rules of space and time. Navigator Zena Vex's tentacles coiled tightly around her control interface. Those structures, they're reorganizing themselves. It's as if the nebula itself is alive. Life signs, Naira demanded. None that we can detect, Krell responded. But these energy readings, they're similar to neural patterns just on an impossible scale. As they watched, the structures continued their endless dance, forming and reforming in patterns that hurt to look at. Naira felt a headache building behind her eyes, and she noticed several crew members rubbing their temples or equivalent sensory organs. Captain, Thorne's voice was unusually urgent. We're receiving another signal, different from the first but definitely human in origin. The bridge speakers crackled to life, but instead of words, they heard something that made everyone freeze, the sound of breathing, slow and mechanical, punctuated by what could only be described as the whispers of countless voices speaking in unison. Track it, Naira ordered, fighting down her growing unease. Take us in closer but maintain safe distance protocols. As the Stellar Seeker penetrated deeper into the nebula, the ship's systems began to behave erratically. Gravity fluctuated, chronometers showed impossible readings, and crew members reported experiencing memories that weren't their own. Captain Zena called out, her voice shaking. I'm getting visions, I think I'm seeing Earth. Before Naira could respond, the main view screen flickered and changed. Instead of the nebula, they saw flashes of a blue-green world, its cities gleaming with impossible technology. But the images were wrong somehow, twisted. The cities seemed to pulse and breathe, the buildings flowing like liquid metal and the people. By the void, Krell whispered. What did they do to themselves? The images showed humans, but they were changing, their bodies merging with machines in ways that defied comprehension. Some had multiple faces, others existed in several places at once, their forms flickering between states of matter. The Immortality Project, Thorne realized. This must be what happened when it went wrong. A new signal cut through their communications, stronger than before. This time the voice was clear, but it spoke with the resonance of many voices layered together. We see you, children of the stars. You've come so far to find us, to learn our truth. We are humanity's dream of forever, perfected through 40 millennia of evolution. We are eternal, we are legion, and now that you're here, we can share our gift. Reality fractured and reformed around the crew of the Stellar Seeker as the failsafe protocols tore through the quantum network. The facility's walls phased between solid and ethereal, each pulse revealing layers of time like pages in an ancient book. Captain Naira Voss watched as Dr. Alina Morrison's unified consciousness began to fragment, splitting into countless individual streams of awareness. The containment field is stabilizing, Krell reported, his four eyes tracking multiple dimensional shifts simultaneously. It's forcing them to exist in a single quantum state. The transformed humans fought back against the protocol, their collective consciousness writhing through the structure of space-time itself. The nebula outside churned with violent energy as billions of merged minds struggled against the constraints of linear existence. "They're trying to break free," Thorne observed, his crystalline form resonating with the quantum disturbances. "But something's different. Look at the pattern." Through the chaos, Naira could see it too. The unified consciousness wasn't just fighting, it was dividing, fragmenting into distinct individuals. The failsafe wasn't trying to destroy them. It was trying to restore their individuality. Navigator Zenavex's voice cut through their neural links again, stronger now. "Captain, I've accessed their primary data core. The failsafe was designed by a group of human scientists in the final days. They knew they couldn't stop the transformation, but they could preserve humanity itself." The facility shuddered as another wave of quantum energy pulsed through it. In the center of the main chamber, Dr. Alina Morrison's form stabilized, no longer shifting between states. Her eyes were clear now, filled with something that had been missing before individual consciousness. What have you done?" Alina asked, her voice now singular, trembling. "The unity, it's breaking apart." "Not breaking," Naira replied, understanding finally dawning. "Healing. Your ancestors didn't want to destroy what you'd become. They wanted to save what you were." Around them, other human forms began to materialize: scientists, engineers, civilians, each emerging from the quantum soup as distinct individuals. The network that had held their merged consciousness for 40 millennia was restructuring itself, creating space for individual minds while maintaining their immortality. Krell worked frantically at a console that phased in and out of existence. The quantum signatures are stabilizing. They're maintaining their advanced evolution but regaining their individual identities. It's brilliant engineering. "You don't understand," Alina pleaded, though her voice carried a note of uncertainty. "We were perfect. We were everything all at once. Now we're limited again." "Not limited," came a new voice, and they turned to see a holographic figure materializing, a human scientist from 40,000 years ago, her recorded message preserved within the failsafe. "Enhanced. My name is Dr. Samantha Wright. If you're seeing this, then our last hope has succeeded. We couldn't stop the transformation, but we could build in a way back." The hologram flickered as it continued. Humanity wasn't meant to be a singular consciousness. Our strength was always in our diversity, our individual perspectives. The transformation gave us immortality and power beyond imagination, but it took away the very thing that made us human, our ability to be uniquely ourselves. The chamber filled with more awakening humans, each experiencing individual consciousness for the first time in millennia. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sensation of being singular again. Others reached out to touch each other, marveling at the concept of separate existence. "The network remains," Dr. Wright's hologram explained. "You'll maintain your evolution, your immortality, but now you have choice again. You can merge or separate at will, maintaining both your advanced capabilities and your individual identities." Naira watched as Alina explored her newly individualized form, tears streaming down her face. I remember now. I remember who I was, who I am." But their moment of revelation was interrupted by a violent tremor that shook the entire structure. Thorne's crystalline form pulsed with alarm. "Captain, we have a problem. The quantum restructuring is destabilizing the nebula. If it collapses, it'll create a chain reaction," Krell finished, his eyes wide with horror. "The released energy could tear apart this entire sector of space." The hologram of Dr. Wright flickered again. "There's one more choice to make. The failsafe requires a conscious decision. The network can be stabilized, but only if enough individual minds choose to accept the new paradigm. Force them and the system collapses. Everything we became, everything we were, lost forever." Alina stood straighter, her form now fully stable. "So we must choose, all of us, return to what we were or risk everything we've become." The chamber filled with light as billions of newly individualized minds faced their first real choice in 40,000 years. Naira and her crew found themselves witnesses to a moment that would reshape the galaxy, humanity's second chance at evolution, but this time with their humanity intact. As the nebula churned with potential apocalyptic energy, the fate of trillions hung on a simple question. Could a species that had tasted godhood choose to become human again, even if it meant keeping their power but accepting the burden of individual consciousness and choice? The answer would come soon, for better or worse. The quantum countdown had begun. The nebula began to shift, the geometric structures aligning themselves into a massive array that dwarfed the stellar seeker. Energy readings spiked off the charts, and the ship's quantum sensors detected multiple reality fractures forming around them. "Full reverse," Naira shouted. "Get us out of here." But as Zena engaged the engines, nothing happened. The ship remained frozen in space, caught in some kind of temporal lock. The geometric structures continued their alignment, forming what appeared to be a massive eye that focused its attention directly on them. "Captain," Krell's voice was barely a whisper. "The ship's quantum core. It's resonating with something out there. The patterns. They're trying to rewrite our basic molecular structure." Naira watched in horror as patches of the bridge began to shimmer and change, reality itself seeming to bend and fold. Crew members reported similar phenomena throughout the ship walls becoming transparent, time moving at different speeds in different sections, and worst of all, crew members experiencing moments of multiplication, existing in multiple states simultaneously. This is what happened to them, Naira realized. They didn't just achieve immortality, they transcended physical reality itself, and now they want to. Her words were cut off as a blinding light filled the bridge, and every screen on the ship displayed the same message in ancient human text. "Welcome to eternity." The nebula closed around them like a fist, and the Stellar Seeker and its crew found themselves being pulled into something that defied description. A space between spaces, where the laws of physics were more like suggestions, and the line between organic and artificial, between one and many, between now and forever, had long since ceased to exist. As consciousness began to fade, Naira had one last coherent thought. They hadn't found humanity's last message. They had found humanity itself, evolved into something beyond comprehension. And now they were about to discover exactly why the human. Captain Naira Voss regained consciousness to find herself standing in what appeared to be an ancient human research facility, though something was fundamentally wrong with its geometry. Corridors stretched into impossible angles, and windows looked out onto multiple different views simultaneously, some showing the nebula, others revealing landscapes that couldn't exist in normal space. "Captain," Krell's voice echoed from somewhere both near and far. She turned to find her chief science officer examining a wall that rippled like water. All four of his eyes were dilated in a mix of terror and fascination. "The entire structure. It's in quantum flux. Reality here is malleable." First Officer Thorne materialized beside them, his crystalline form refracting light in new, unsettling ways. "The rest of the crew is scattered throughout the facility. Navigator Vex is trying to establish our location, but conventional space-time coordinates seem meaningless here." The facility's walls pulsed with soft blue light, and holographic displays flickered to life around them, showing images of human scientists from 40,000 years ago. They watched as the recordings played out scenes of the past, the discovery of quantum consciousness transfer, the first successful immortality experiments, and then the chain. "Look at the date stamps," Krell pointed out. "These events aren't playing in chronological order, they're happening simultaneously across multiple timelines." A figure appeared at the end of the corridor, a human scientist, but wrong in ways that defied description. Dr. Alina Morrison, according to her nameplate, existed in several states at once. Her form shifted between young and old, flesh and machine, single and multiple. "Welcome to the Ascension Institute," she spoke, her voice resonating across different frequencies. "You're the first visitors we've had in. Well, time is relative here." Naira stepped forward, her scales rigid with tension. "What happened here? What did humanity become?" "Become?" Elena smiled, her face fracturing into multiple expressions. "We transcended. We solved the ultimate equation, the unification of consciousness and quantum mechanics. Physical form was just the beginning. We became living thought, existing across all possible states simultaneously." "But the warning signal," Thorne interjected. "Your own kind tried to warn others away." "Ah, yes, the dissenters." Elena's form flickered. Those who feared the change, who couldn't comprehend the beauty of infinite existence, they tried to stop us to maintain their limited perception of reality. They failed to understand that evolution cannot be stopped. The walls around them suddenly became transparent, revealing vast chambers filled with what looked like sleeping humans. Millions of them, their bodies connected to impossible machinery that pulsed with the same energy as the nebula outside. These are the original volunteers, Alina explained. Their consciousness spread across the quantum network, becoming one with the universal wave function. But we needed more. Consciousness seeks to expand to experience all possibilities. Horror dawned on Naira as she understood. You're not just showing us this, you're preparing us. Precisely. Alina's smile widened impossibly. Your species, all of you, represent new patterns of consciousness, new possibilities to add to our collective. 40,000 years of evolution have prepared us for this moment, the next great expansion. Zena's voice suddenly burst through their neural links. Captain, I found something, the original containment protocols. The humans who sent the warning, they built a failsafe. Something that could. Her voice cut off as reality rippled around them. Alina's form grew more unstable, spreading like a fractal pattern across the walls and ceiling. No more time for secrets, the human consciousness said, its voice now a chorus of millions. The integration begins now. The facility's walls began to dissolve, revealing the true nature of their prison, a vast neural network extending throughout the nebula, pulsing with the combined consciousness of transformed humanity. Streams of quantum data flowed through the structure like blood through veins, carrying fragments of consciousness, memories, and existence itself. The signal, Krell suddenly exclaimed, his scientific mind racing even in the face of horror. The warning beacon, it wasn't just a message. It was a key activating dormant protocols within their network. Naira watched as parts of the quantum structure began to fluctuate, responding to some hidden program buried deep within its code. The human consciousness around them reacted, its patterns becoming more chaotic. What have you done? Alina's voice had lost its harmony, becoming a discordant chorus of competing frequencies. We didn't do anything, Naira realized. This was humanity's final act of defiance against what they became, and we just triggered it by bringing the key into the heart of their network. The quantum structure shuddered, and for a moment, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. In that instant, Naira understood that they were about to witness either the salvation or the complete destruction of everything they knew. The only question was, which had humanity's last free minds planned for? As the facility began to unravel around them, Naira saw Alina's form split into countless versions, each showing a different fate, a different possibility. The evolved human consciousness that had waited 40 millennia to continue its expansion was facing something it never expected, a choice forced upon it by its own past. The next few moments would determine not just their fate, but the fate of consciousness itself in their galaxy. And somewhere in the quantum chaos, Naira heard a single, pure human voice, not the chorus of the transformed, but the original warning signal now playing its final message. Remember what we were, not what we became, and make the right choice. Time seemed to pause in the quantum structure as billions of newly awakened minds grappled with their choice. Captain Naira Voss felt the weight of millennia pressing down as she watched the transformed humans struggle with their first truly individual decision in 40,000 years. The nebula continued its violent convulsions, reality itself groaning under the strain of quantum instability. Through the facility's shifting walls, they could see tears forming in space-time, threatening to rip apart the fabric of the universe itself. Energy levels are critical, Krell reported, all four eyes fixed on readings that shouldn't be possible. We have minutes, maybe less, before the collapse begins. Alina Morrison stood at the center of the chamber, her now stable form radiating a quiet strength that hadn't been present in her unified state. To all who can hear me, she broadcast through the quantum network, her voice carrying to every awakened mind. We face our first real choice in millennia. We can reject this change, try to force our way back to unity. Or we can embrace what we once were, what we could be again. Through the quantum link that still connected them, they felt the responses of countless others. Fear, confusion, anger, but also hope, curiosity, and something that had been lost in the unified consciousness: wonder. The failsafe requires voluntary acceptance, Thorn reminded them, his crystalline form pulsing with the surrounding energy. Force it, and everything collapses. Navigator Zena Vex's voice cut through their neural links. Captain, I'm detecting changes in the quantum field. They're making their choices. They watched as streams of consciousness began to align themselves within the network. Some fought against the change, trying to maintain the pure unity they'd known for so long. But others, led by Alina, embraced their rediscovered individuality while maintaining their connection to the whole. It's like a symphony, Alina explained, her eyes bright with understanding. Before, we were a single, overwhelming note. Now we can be harmony. The hologram of Dr. Wright flickered back to life, her expression hopeful. The failsafe was never meant to undo what we became. It was meant to remind us of what we lost. In our rush to transcend our limitations, we forgot that our differences were our greatest strength. Suddenly, the facility shuddered violently. Krell's instruments screamed warnings as reality began to tear itself apart around them. "It's not enough," he shouted. "Too many are still resisting. The quantum structure is collapsing." But then something extraordinary happened. Alina stepped forward, her form beginning to glow with quantum energy. "Let me show them," she said. "Let me remind them." Through the network, she broadcast not words but memories, the joy of individual discovery, the thrill of connecting with another mind by choice, the beauty of seeing the universe through billions of different perspectives rather than a single unified view. "We can have both," her consciousness resonated through the network. "We can maintain our evolution, our immortality, our power, but we can choose when to be one and when to be many. We can experience the universe through countless eyes rather than a single view. We can be more than we ever were, precisely because we can still be who we were." The effect rippled through the quantum structure. One by one, then in waves, the transformed humans made their choice. The network shifted, restructured itself, becoming something new, a framework that supported both individual consciousness and voluntary unity. "The quantum field is stabilizing," Krell reported, his voice filled with awe. "They're accepting the new paradigm, the nebula, it's calming." Captain Naira watched as the facility around them transformed. The impossible geometries settled into merely extraordinary ones. The violent energy of the nebula smoothed into patterns of indescribable beauty. "We understand now," Alina said, speaking for herself but resonating with billions of others. "This was humanity's true legacy, not the warning but the way back, not just to what we were but to something greater." The hologram of Dr. Wright smiled one last time before fading. "Remember this moment. Remember that even in our greatest mistake, we found our greatest redemption." As the quantum structure stabilized, Naira and her crew found themselves back on the bridge of the Stellar Seeker. The nebula still swirled before them, but now it pulsed with ordered purpose rather than chaotic energy. "Captain," Thorn reported, "we're receiving a transmission." Through their communication system came Alina's voice, but now it was part of a chorus, not a forced unity, but a voluntary harmony of countless individual minds. "We will remain here in the Edge Nebula," she said. "We have much to relearn about being individuals and much to teach ourselves about balancing unity and diversity. But we are no longer a threat to the galaxy. The warning signal can be deactivated. Let others know that humanity didn't end in tragedy. We found our way back." As the Stellar Seeker prepared to depart, Naira looked one last time at the nebula. Within its swirling depths, she could see the quantum network glowing with new purpose. A civilization reborn, balancing on the edge between godhood and humanity. "Send a message to the Galactic Science Council," she ordered. "Tell them we found humanity's last broadcast, but more importantly, we found humanity itself, and they finally found their way home." The nebula shimmered behind them as they entered hyperspace. Its light now a beacon not of warning, but of hope, proof that even in the darkest moments of evolution, consciousness could find its way back to the light. Transformed but unbroken, unified but individual, eternal yet eternally changing.